Canadian as well for some of our Canadian members. But I will tell you the donations right now are in US. So if you use your credit card, it will be translated into US funds. So for $50, it could, sorry, Sheena, back again. Just want to go through them. So just some examples would be that, you know, $50, next page, $50 could get, you know, 4 kits for pregnant adolescent girls in Niger. $100 US would maybe have 3 girls in Madagascar finish the comprehensive skills course. And an example would be $250 US could have 3 adolescent girls with health care. So really just gives you a sense of that a lot can be done with a small amount. And so they've put some challenges together to be able to incent us all to work towards a challenge. So if you go to the next slide, Sheena, I can talk a little bit about them. The main challenge, of course, is about which district raises the most amount of money. And so the district that does that will have a full page profile in the next issue of the Zontchen. And the second and third place districts will be featured in the newsletter. But there's some mini challenges as well. So in from November 1st to the 8th, the first 8 districts that get 101 in donations will get a feature on my Zonta page. And then there's a second challenge through 10th through the 20th. And that's about really trying to get members who may have never donated before to Zonta International, and they will receive a special mention on social media. And then a final bonus challenge, which is the 1st of December, and why they kept the December 1st in, because it is Giving Tuesday, and that club will get a special video message from the international president. I will tell you that there is a special donation page for each district. If you go to the next page, Sheena, you can see the URL at the top of the page. I will be asking the district to post this on the website. I'm going to ask the area presidents to tell the presidents to put it on their Zonta Facebook pages. But when you click on that page, it takes you to the graphic that you're seeing, and then you can start to see the donations that are coming in. And it is, like I said, in US funds. I know there has been a lot of discussion. I know specifically my committee and I were talking about a lot of people are starting to want to go local because of COVID, but I think that there's lots of reasons why we also need to consider international. If you can imagine how our local impact is having on us, you multiply that by 10 for international impact in some of these areas. So if you can donate, that's great, or encourage your club or your area to do a challenge, I think it would be great. So thank you again for your consideration. And again, if you want to reach out to me on any questions or ask any questions now, I'd be happy to take them.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carrie. That was great. And it's I will make sure that it gets up onto our website and that the communication team knows to post this. So I think it's great. Thanks a lot. So at this point, we are going to now turn the presentation over to Kathleen Douglas. So Kathleen is not only our District 4 Leadership Development Chairperson, but she also sits on the Zonta International Leadership Development Committee. So we're very blessed to have some experience with us, and we get to have all kinds of previews for a lot of the programs that they do offer. There are the host of them on the Zonta International site, so please check them out. Kathleen, at this point, I will turn the presentation over to you.
Thanks so much, Sheena. I appreciate that, and I hope you can hear me okay. That sounds good? Great. So let's go to the next slide, Sheena. Let's just start off right. Let's get right into it. So when we think about our workshop goals, which is the next slides, we really are looking at this to think about the fact that by understanding how and why we behave as we do, we can then become a little bit more positive and productive in our relationship with others. And I know that there are some people on the call here, certainly myself, who sometimes just think, like, why can I just not connect with that person? And the reality is that everybody has certain likes and dislikes, quirks, and even idiosyncrasies. These are all the qualities that make up your personality, the things that make you you. Everyone has a unique personality, and I think that makes life interesting. Sometimes it's a bit of a challenge. So that's why we're going to have this little conversation tonight. So let's have the next slide, please, Sheena. So when we know ourselves and others, we will hopefully develop a greater awareness of ourselves, ourselves and others. We can hopefully have a stronger sense of willingness to resolve conflict. We want to have a higher performance in some of the projects, some of the teams on which we work. We also want to be more productive in our team building. And I think it's for those of us who are leaders or aspiring to be leaders, it also helps us to be more responsive and responsible leaders. So contrary to common perception, people basically aren't confined to one personality type. Usually there is no one who is entirely a complete extrovert or a complete introvert, a total neat freak or a slob. We're all variations depending on the environment or what we're doing or the situation. There is a minority that might be at the extreme ends of a trait, but most people are somewhere in the middle. So when we talk about personalities tonight, there's going to be a great deal of generalization. So let's just be very clear about that. When we talk about personality types, it refers actually to the psychological classification, so to speak, of different types of individuals. And personality types are sometimes distinguished from personality traits, which tends to be the nitty gritty. And this is a smaller grouping of people because you can have an extrovert, and I know people very much who seem to be an extrovert who are actually introverted, but they respond to the occasion. So we have to think about the fact that we're all a little bit somewhere in the middle, but we tend to be one type of person. So if we can have the next slide, please, Sheena. And again, this goes into the 4 personality traits, and this is by Best, and the work is done by, I want to read the name here, James H. Breuer. He did this in 1984. And there are many types of tools to describe personalities. We've all heard about Myers-Briggs. There's the color personalities. There is Atkinson McClellan. There is many, many other tools that you can use. This is one that is it's a very basic one, and it's a little bit simple, but that's okay because, you know, we're not always going to be intellectuals. So remembering as we go forward that nobody is going to fit entirely neatly into a slot. So let's just sort of be a little bit general about that. So let's look at our first personality type, the bold. So the bold is, the bold personality type is stimulated by the challenge of a new adventure. There is a need for dominance over the situation and sometimes over other people. The bold type is good when quick decisions and results are needed. These are people that can just, like, let's make a decision, let's work on it, let's get it going. However, long-range planning and direction could be a bit of a problem. The bold type individual likes straightforward communications, which may give the impression of bluntness sometimes. They're not always known for their tact. They are independent and like to work alone. These are great people during this particular time in our world who are quite happy just to work on their projects. Give me the project, let me work on it, leave me alone. But sometimes it creates a bit of a problem because of failure to delegate or communicate or ask for help with major projects. So the bold type individual needs to be sensitive to the needs of others. Otherwise, sometimes in rushing to get the job done, they might tend towards almost crisis management. It's just, they don't see that they're heading towards the iceberg because just like, let's just go, let's just head towards that. Long range planning with other people, working in a collaborative or cooperative environment, and relaxing around others and sort of softer communications will help this person become a little bit more effective. So let's look at some of the things that we want to think about when we work with the bold. And I'm sure you are already getting somebody's name or somebody's face in your mind when you think about a bold. So let's look at their next slide, please, Sheena. So working with bolds, you really want to think about in a problem situation, if there is some conflict or there's a situation that has to be resolved, you might want to say something like, resolving this is my top priority. I'll do it now. I appreciate how urgent this is. It's about talking to the time sensitivity of it. Thank you for your request. I'll call you the minute I know the answer. What you may want to avoid when dealing with a bold person is to say something like, I know how you feel, because you probably don't. I don't know what else to tell you, because that's vague to them. This could take a while. Again, that's like, just tell me what it is. Don't string me along here. And of course, the death knell is calm down. We all can relate to that. So you really want to think about the way you phrase things. When you think about a bold, when you're trying to communicate with them, you really want to get right to the point, get to the issues. This is not the time to be verbose or gentle and do a 5-minute introduction into a conversation. You want to just get right to it. So think about some of the bolds with whom you work. Can we have the next one, please, Sheena? So the expressive. Don't you just love that little face? The expressive type personality is stimulated by being around others and helping to persuade or influencing to their point of view. There is a bit of a need to be an influence over others, and at the same time, they're really good with people and generates a positive and enthusiastic environment. But for them, working alone can be a bit of a problem because they are stimulated by other people. The expressive type likes to talk and is generally good at it. They're really good conversationalists. They're good at small talk. They're good at the introductions. They're good at sort of the small talk that you'd have at a on a social event, at the reception desk, for example. They tend to be outgoing, neighborly, optimistic, and very confident. And sometimes time control and objectivity could be a challenge for them. So if they're in charge of the agenda, it might be a long agenda, but it'll be very interesting. It'll be social. But for those bold people, they'll be just churning at the bit because it's going to make them crazy. So the expressive type individual needs to be aware of their impact on the room and the other people. They as a need to maybe control some of the details and to work with very specific objectives in mind. Because of their feelings for other people, they may tend to delegate too much. Not because they're giving away stuff, it's because they want to include everyone. They really want to be inclusive and appreciate the fact that everybody's contributing to this. And sometimes being overly optimistic can be a problem. They see the iceberg and they're thinking, well, it'll be fine. It'll all work out. You know, we'll get there. No problem at all. Next slide, please, Sheena. So when we're working with expressives in a situation where there's some conflict or a problem, you have to be very attentive to this person. And you might want to say something like, you know, I understand that you're upset and I'm sorry about that. What can I do to help you through this? How is this affecting you? You are seem to be upset. You want to talk about feelings a lot. I really care about working with you and I know that we can resolve this. You want to perhaps avoid something about being very blunt. You want to say, let's just stick to the facts, because this person is not about facts. They're about the impact of the people with whom they work. And if you say to them, I'm really busy right now, they're just going to think that you don't care about them. And please never say to someone who is an expressive person, let's not get too emotional about it, because that'll just tune them right out. Next one, please. So we're a sympathetic person, and this is a sweet picture. Thank you, Sheena, for that picture. The sympathetic type personality is most often very patient. They're dependable, loyal, and a good listener. And what a good example of this lovely dog. There is a need for the sympathetic person to belong and to serve. They tend to be hard workers, are very productive, and willing to be a follower. This is not necessarily the person that's going to step up in front. But somehow working for work's sake and feeling insecure is not necessarily going to work for everybody else. It could be a bit of an issue for them. The sympathetic type person likes security and the status quo. They generally give long service. So of course, we know who they are in Zonta. They're persistent, pretty even-tempered, and very amicable. The challenge for them might be that procrastination and a lack of urgency, which can be a situation, it can be a problem. So the sympathetic individual needs to learn to adjust fairly quickly to changes that are, especially in today's age where everything is quick change, and to be assertive when they need to be. Because of their need for security, this person might be a little bit too possessive with information, and they want to be hold on to, they want to be the keeper of the knowledge and the stuff. So the sympathetic person is the one who, if we're facing the iceberg, is going to be saying, well, how is everybody doing with this? Are you feeling good about the iceberg? You know, it's probably, you know, we're kind of about to be able to work around it, and I've got trust in the captain. You know, we're all working on this together, and, you know, we will get through it, and it's going to be fine. Let's just work together on this. So let's talk about the next slide then, how to work with somebody who's a sympathetic person. In a problem situation, you might want to say to them, I can tell this is important and I want to help you. Thank you for being so reasonable. You know, together we're going to figure this out. And is there anything else I need to know? Because remember, they like to hold on to information. So you may not have all the facts about something. In a situation that's a bit challenging, you please don't, you want to say, I'm feeling really frustrated, because then this sort of sets up their, then they have to react to this. This is a big problem because that can be overwhelming for them. If you could just listen to me, I could explain. They'll just tune right out of you. They're just not going to hear, because as soon as you say that, if you could just listen to me, I could explain it, because what you're saying to them basically is you're overreacting. And don't worry about it. You know, yeah, that's going to be fine. Yeah, that's really what they want to hear, because they're going to be worried. These are the ones who are, these are the folks who are going to be doing the hand wringing and sort of really worrying about things, but not necessarily doing much about it, but doing a lot of worrying and saying, okay, we have to be our leaders, and we're going to get stuff done. It'll be fine. So the next slide, please. So a technical person is the one who is controlled, cautious, maybe precise, and rule and regulations oriented. There is a need for a sense of order. The technical type has an orientation towards planning and accuracy. These are the people that you want to read and edit and ensure that everything is absolutely correct. At times they might be called a perfectionist. Some of you might know what that feels like. The technical type likes to be very thorough, and they're really serious about having high quality standards and how to reduce risk through logical thinking, and is persuaded by the facts and is willing to listen to the facts. It's all about, it's like the old dragnet, Jack Webb, like just the facts, man, just tell me the facts. They may not have the self-confidence in the world, so they might need a little bit of support around this. And the technical type individual needs perhaps, you know, with some support to develop self-confidence and a tolerance for the fact that there is going to be confusion and there may be conflict, and we may not have all the answers. And the ability to make quick decisions is sometimes a challenge for them, because they need to get more and more information. It's like the, I think there's a phrase about getting more information, and you can't really move on it because you sort of need more and more information. And you want to make sure that they have, that they can be a little bit more flexible around things. It's, analysis paralysis. That's what the term is. That's right. So a technical person, and we want to look at the working with them, is the fact that, you know, if they're seeing the iceberg, they say, well, excuse me, how many hours are going to be heading there? What's the speed of the boat? If I do the mathematics on this, we should be able to avoid this with enough time. These are people who are going to get down to the nitty gritty of that. And when you work with technicals, you really want to express your concern about, I have a concern about this situation. This is not the time to be sort of working all the mathematics out. We need to act now. You might want to say to them, to support them, well, let me get some more information, and I'm going to get back to you right away with the facts. is there anything else I need to know? This is another thing, another way to say that. If there's an issue, please try to avoid to say to them, you don't need all the facts. You seem upset. I think I've got it. I am really excited about, because this is not the type of communication that's going to work well with them. So when you think about the technicals, you want to really think about the person who needs a lot of facts. They may not be necessarily the most passionate person, but gosh, they're going to get stuff done, which is just great. So let's have our next slide, please. Down here. Okay. So when we think about communication styles, and now this is a little bit different, but it's not hugely varied from what we talked about before. And I'm sure you're thinking about people in your club or people with whom you work, and you're thinking about, yeah, well, I can see where that person is this. Now let's layer that communication style on top of that, because there's a variety of instruments that help to identify our individual communication styles. And I know Lori Robinson has done a lot of work on this with her work with our governors and their orientation around communication and challenges with conflict. So for the purpose of this, we've got 4 communication styles I'm just going to share with you. And they're done by Carl Jung, who is a very famous Swiss psychologist. And this instrument it's fairly easy to look at, and it's based on the tendencies of us to be, in his perspective, task-oriented versus people-oriented, and easygoing versus take charge. So there is some simplicities here, and again, let's just go with the generalization and the tendencies of the 4 different types. So if we can have the next slide, please, Sheena. So the controllers, they like to take charge and want control of themselves, others, and the situation. This is going to be the captain of the boat. They're task-oriented drivers, and they're really focused on the end goal. May not be too concerned if everybody's happy about what's happening, but they're going to get the job done. So you can rely on them to do that. The collaborators are more easygoing. They're relationship-oriented, and they enjoy working with people towards developing a consensus. And for them, the process is just as important as the goal. Analyzers are very detail-oriented, as we talked about, sort of like a technical person. Logical thinkers who may analyze others and the situations. They may work best alone to come up with a solution, and therefore sometimes take time to make decisions and to take action. So these are the people in your meeting who are thinking. They may not talk a lot of the time, but they're thinking, and they come up with really mindful, valuable contributions. Our socializers are outgoing. They thrive on change and enjoy meeting people. They're okay with a little chaos. They get their energy from other people, and therefore work best when brainstorming with others and making decisions and having group thoughts and just getting together in a group and just talking about things and working that problem out. So thinking about yourself and others, by being aware of your communication preference, you may have a better understanding of how others perceive you. So the ability to recognize and adapt to your listeners' communications will make them feel like you've maybe taken time to listen to them and focus on their needs. This results hopefully in a more positive experience and strengthens relationships with other people. So Sheena, if we could have the next slide. So again, let's talk about nonverbal behavior, because as we know, this is really, really critical. And I am the first one to say my face shows everything. And those of you who know me are probably smiling because you say, my eyes roll and I'm looking away. And so some of us do it better than others. However, when you think about controllers, when you want to look at their behavior, they tend to be very direct. They prefer to be in control. There is a sense of urgency. They have a louder volume, and they very, very much are very expressive. They lean in, and they have a lot of hand gestures, and you can really see them being part of the conversation. They are very engaged. They appear to be very engaged. Collaborators, while they may appear relaxed, they will ask a lot of questions. They like a win-win attitude and maybe are a little hesitant to make decisions, but are highly emotional with very expressive tones. These are the people who are going to be looking at other people and ensuring that we are working together on the same level. Analyzers, perhaps they're cautious, logical thinkers, perhaps a little bit soft-spoken. Their voices might not be too monotone. And I'm thinking of someone we've worked with for a lot of years in Zonta, who's an engineer, has a very flat tone, and is one of the smartest people I know. And they are not necessarily someone who is going to make a lot of eye contact and facial expressions. So these sometimes analyzers are hard to read in their body language. Sometimes the most challenging. So you have to really use all your senses in this. Socializers tend to be outspoken, quick to make a decision, fairly assertive because they're confident, they're fast talkers, and they are going to express themselves through gestures, their facial expressions, and even their tone. And some of this is cultural, which we also have to sort of layer that on top of that too. So, you can never be 100% sure what people mean through their non-verbal communications. You can look for consistencies in their gestures and their eye movements, the tone of the voice, and the facial expression. And sometimes, we have to remember, people will tell you who they are if you are looking and listening for it. So the next slide, please. So when you're communicating with a controller, get to the point. Stay within it for them. Ask straightforward questions. Communicate confidently with a clear, concise message. Avoid the clutter and the fuss. This is not the time to have verbal diarrhea. A collaborator, you do want to show an interest in them. You have to listen patiently and give them a good feel about your message or what you're asking them to do. This is that leaning forward in a gentle way and nodding your head and really sort of asking, like sort of giving them that welcoming, yes, I want to hear what you have to say, body language. And an analyzer, this is, as it says, avoiding the small talk. Present the facts and the data, providing the details and the process that you're going to follow. And so this is an opportunity for you to be brief, succinct, and to the point. A socializer, you want to show their interest in it, because remember, these are sort of people who feed their energy from other people in a very positive way. You want to be upbeat and listen to their personal experiences and tie their experiences to your message. So this is where you may want to really personalize this. So it could be something as much as, oh, I understand that when you've had this experience before, tell me how that went with you. So when you think about communication style, you really want to think about, what does your communication style communicate to others? So this is a little bit of self-reflection here. Does your serious expression communicate that you don't want to be there? Or is it your serious face? Does the lack of eye contact communicate that you're disinterested in the fact that that's just your style? If you're looking up and away and not paying attention, for some people, they're just, what's going on with you? Does your quick rate of speech communication, does it indicate that you're in a hurry and that you don't really have time for them? You're just trying to get through the conversation. Are you hurrying them up? So these are things that you might want to consider in your own style. And I've always thought that the platinum rule compared to the golden rule is very helpful. So the platinum rule is do unto others as they want to be done unto. And so you'll find good communicators will slow down their speech when they're speaking with someone who is thoughtful and mindful, because they're going to be a little bit in a very respectful way, not mimicking, but reflecting the speech, the tone, the pattern. And that is very respectful. To communicate well, as we all know, you have to not only be speaking, you have to be listening and watching. So let's have our next slide, please, Sheena. So when we think about communications, and this is if you really would like to improve your communication style and work on some of the things that perhaps you could be doing, is just being a good listener. I always believe in this, and you've heard me say this many times, Ask good questions. Ask questions that will help to give you insight. Ask questions to learn more, to listen to nonverbal behavior. Because as you are speaking, you're never learning when you're speaking. This is sorry, a little bit of the, you know. And being open to change, be willing to change your mind. Look for alternatives and work with others to resolve conflict. And during this particular period in our lives, particularly in North America, this is a time when people have very set opinions and perspectives. Are we willing to hear something different? Or are we committed to confirmation bias, which basically means you are only listening to other people or messages that agree with you? And if we only do that, we will only ever hear one side of the discussion. One of the things that, quite honestly, I like about myself is the fact that I really like to hear differing perspectives. I like to have my mind changed to say, I've never thought of it. That's a really good perspective. I didn't know that. Wow, that's you know, that's something that I think I've matured to hear other opinions, because I think at one time, you know, especially when we're young and very enthusiastic, everything is black and white. Well, as we get older, along with our hair, other things get gray. And so as learners, we want to be willing to learn new behaviors and what makes others tick, and asking for feedback, having that courage to not just say after a presentation, well, how was that? Did I do okay? It was saying, so specifically, how was my rate of speech? Was I speaking too quickly? When I was speaking, do you think that I made an appropriate connection with that other person? This is where you want to ask your trusted advisors to give you feedback, is to and trust them and hear what they say and be willing to truly hear what they have to say. You want to be positive. You want to learn from your mistakes and sort of think, well, I messed that one up. That one didn't do too well. And then move on and be proactive and take responsibility for not only your behavior, because none of us are perfect in our behavior. There's times we've all thought, well, I kind of messed that up. I didn't communicate very well, or that was an opportunity I really didn't take advantage of. And so we, you know, if we're mature, which doesn't always have to do with age, we can be responsible for our behavior. We want to be respectful and sensitive and accept differences. I mean, if everybody was exactly the same in this world, it would be so boring and so monotone. I mean, isn't it great when you can have a really good debate or discussion with someone and it's respectful, and you want to show appreciation for the difference and the diversity in others, and, you know, perhaps flex your behavior or your communication style to match your listeners, particularly if it's an important relationship to you, whether it's a partner or whether it's a family member or dear members of your Zant Club or your friends. So if your listeners' facial expressions or eye contact or tone or gestures concern you, you might check it out, and you might even want to have, again, depending on the relationship that you have, is asking them if they've got some questions for you. And rather than me saying to you, do you understand what I'm saying? Because that puts the pressure on you, saying, am I making myself clear? Am I helping you to see my perspective? Have I explained everything? Could I explain it in a different way? It's like when you are facilitating a discussion, when you are asking a question to the group, and you say, are there any questions? Which is a useless question. You might want to ask something about, because you'll have a diversity of learners in your room and different types of communication styles, and you might want to say, are there particular aspects which we need to review? Are there particular objectives that we maybe to explore a little bit more? You want to ask some very specific questions. You want to ask people for their opinions and their thoughts and what's important to them. And that doesn't mean it has to be an interrogation. These things can be, you know, really, really open, probing questions, and helping people to understand if there's clarification, because I'm not sure about you, but I have left meetings, I have left online meetings and face-to-face meetings, and thinking, what was going on there? Like, what happened? What am I supposed to be doing with this? I'm not really sure this is really helpful. So we want to think about these things. So if we can have the next slide, please. So again, we talked about these things, and I would suggest to you that we really want to consider about when we communicate, what is it that we want to communicate? Is it about the actual content, or is it about developing and maintaining relationships? Because there can be a combination of the two. The reality is that sometimes the relationship is more important than the content or the message. And I think that's where we sometimes have to really sort of be aware of what's happening. So if we can have the next slide, please, Sheena. So I'm going to offer you this opportunity, a 5-minute challenge. During your next conversation with someone else, I want you to really listen to the other person's non-verbal behavior. Pay attention to your reaction. Are you backing up? Are you getting closer? Are you what does Seinfeld say, a close talker? Are you feeding into them? Are you listening? Are you saying, yeah, you're really paying attention to them? And we've all been gifted, hopefully, with someone who's a really good listener. What you're saying to them makes you feel important. And as we know, particularly as they've discovered in some of the cases with people who have dementia, they may not remember who you are. They may not remember that you're their child or their partner. They may not remember what they just had for lunch. They remember how you make them feel. Do you make them feel as if they are valuable? Do you make them feel, as if they're silly because they're raising something that you hadn't thought of before? And you really, are you willing to adjust your style? That's the whole thing. Are you mature enough to say, well, or do you say, well, no, that's just me. That's just me. That's the way I am. Which is fine, except that you're only going to be blocked into that for the rest of your life. Are you willing to adapt your message to grab their attention? Is your messaging, is your communication for you or them? Because I really believe that you can develop most of the above skills, and even if they don't come naturally to you, you can learn and keep trying and asking for help and be willing to hear feedback and input, not criticism, because there's nothing helpful in criticism. I think that as you try to improve, it's worth taking the time to develop, because I think you might see some positive results, particularly if you're having some conflict with someone. So Sheena, could we have the next slide, please? So when we think about sources of conflict, apart from the communication and apart from our personality styles, we know that people just have differing work styles. As most of us laugh about, and I can see many of you smiling, asking me to do a 5 o'clock in the morning Zonta International call is not my most productive time. I do it because I'm asked to do it, and I have to really, really prepare. So I actually have to get up, even though it's 5 o'clock in the morning call, I have to get up about 4:15 just to get myself into the mode, because it's not my preferred work style. Sometimes, we have a lack of communication. Well, I thought you knew that. Well, of course, doesn't everybody know that? And one of the things I have found working on a committee, compared to being the chair of the committee, is that the onus is on me to ensure that I communicate across, up and down. So we really think about communication, how important it is to really focus on our communication, ensure that people, better to over communicate, not over inform, but over communicate. Just thought you'd like to know, just include you in this. Do you need to be informed? Do you need to be consulted? Do you just need to sort of have a rough idea of what's happening? And sometimes we just don't have access to the information. And I don't know about any of you, but certainly I can remember at work where you would have silos in the different departments, and you're doing your work and you're doing this project, and somebody comes up at a meeting and they're saying, well, there's just this thing. Well, crap, if I'd known that before, I would have completely changed my presentation, or I would have added those factors into it. That can even happen into Zonta, because sometimes with our committee work, we can have silos. And are we communicating in between our silos? Certainly in Zonta International, one of the things that has been really important with this biennium on the Leadership Development Committee is we are working very closely with the membership committee. We've had joint meetings. We have realized that leadership development is a component, a supplement, and a complement to what membership is doing. Sometimes too, we talk about competing deadlines. Well, what does that mean? It means that my priority is maybe not your priority. And your crisis is not necessarily my crisis. And sometimes we have to think about the fact that we need to be clear about what the deadlines are, and they have to coalesce. Because if I say to somebody I'm waiting for some information for my club newsletter, and I'm saying, okay, I need this information. On Wednesday, I send you an email just to remind you I need this information. Friday, I need this information. I'm sending this out on Sunday night. If you don't get that to me, I'm sorry, it's going to go without you. So we have to be very clear about this, but also helping them to meet that deadline. Or if they don't, saying, how can I help you meet that deadline? Sometimes, you know, folks, we just have personality clashes. And that's the reality. Sometimes there are people we're just not going to get along with. We can't, despite the Coke commercial from 25 years ago, we're not going to be standing in a field with flowers and singing, we're going to teach the world to sing and love, because we're just not all going to be matching. And we can always be respectful. I don't have to love you. I don't have to marry you. I don't have to live with you, but I can respect what you do. And I might think about some of the things that I don't care about you, but I'm going to work really hard to find something positive about you. And I think that's, we have to remember that, especially in Zonda, we're all in this for the right reasons, whatever our right reasons are. And we just have to be respectful. And sometimes if you've got to bite your tongue a little bit, if you have to sort of look down because you're rolling your eyes when somebody else is talking, because you don't want to be rude to them, then that's what you have to do. You have to be mature enough to recognize your reactions to things. And when we talk about an underuse of common sense, well, the reality is too, your common sense is not my common sense. Common sense is built on experience. And I always use the example of the very first time I ever cooked chestnuts. It was in the wintertime, getting ready for the festive season that we're starting to embark on soon. So I had the chestnuts and I put them in the oven. The next thing you know, I thought there were bombs going off in my house because the chestnuts are exploding all over the stove, which made a hell of a mess, by the way. And so my husband said, well, Kathleen, of course you have to puncture them because they're solid. Well, I didn't know that. I'd never cooked chestnuts before. I'd never seen chestnuts cooked before. We didn't have the internet to sort of Google how to cook chestnuts. I always thought, oh, you stick them in the oven. So my common sense after that was different than my common sense before. So when we think about common sense, remember it's based on our experiences. And we would think again, well, that's just common sense. That's your common sense. So the next slide, please, Sheena. So commonalities. When we think about commonalities, and this is a really lovely little slide. I think it's a lovely picture. But you know, if you choose to adjust and flex your style, you'll learn new things and you'll make better decisions. They say that everyone you meet can teach you something new if you choose to learn it. When we're curious about others and ask the right questions, we can learn a whole lot of interesting things. You never know, you might get a spark of imagination or inspiration or a brilliant insight into someone when you least expect it, if you are open and you're looking for those commonalities. I think sometimes too you find more interesting friends. I have a very good friend, Sue, who says, my friends are like a garden. They're all different styles, but they're all wildflowers, and some of them are really tall and reach for the sun, and others are ground creepers. And I like that analogy of a bouquet of friends, because it sort of talks about the fact that we're all different. And if we come from a non-judgmental place, and we're all working on that, other people can really sense it and will naturally be drawn to you. And this results hopefully in you building a more eclectic network of friends from very different backgrounds. And I think in some ways the internet, the access that we have to larger pieces of information, makes it a whole lot easier for us to access all kinds of offline groups and online groups and communities where we can meet a diverse group of people. So as you are looking for commonalities, you will actually become a more progressive person, because our world is becoming an extremely smaller and more cohesive unit, despite what it may appear to be at sometimes, because of the internet, because of the ease of travel, well, except for recently, although how many of you have had multiple Zoom meetings in 1 week, and we're hearing from a lot of different things, and there's all these free webinars that are available to us. Our global diaspora is filled with a population of individuals with really interesting stories and increasingly complex layers, and the textures of their cultural identity. I mean, how fortunate in Zonta we are to belong to an international organization where, and I think this is an advantage when we're at the international level, and we have to think about how will this translate or be interpreted by someone in another country. To me, that's a gift, because it makes me think, oh yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'm not using a $10 word, or maybe I'm not using an acronym or initialization. I think some of us are becoming a little bit more sensitive to these shifts. And as we stay on trend with our global cultural trend, we think about diversity and inclusion. And they always say, you know, the recent analogy to this, and there's lots of them, is that diversity is being invited to the dance. Being inclusive is asking someone to dance. And I think I like that. You know, and I think too, as we flex our styles and we become more mature, we just feel better. We feel like we've sort of a little bit more successful, because when we experience any form of resistance, or in some cases hatred towards somebody else, you know, we're engaging in, like, we're lowering our own vibration in our energy level, because hate takes a lot of energy, and people get, you know, they're so passionate about a lot of things, particularly right now. I think especially in North America, we are facing some real challenges, and if we can work to overcome this resistance, we feel a little bit lighter and happier, and you know, we give ourselves the opportunity to experience real joy, because sometimes it can be really a lot. And with all this access to information, sometimes you think, oh my God, there's just so much to worry about. And going back to that Coke commercial, we can make the world a little bit better place as we demonstrate understanding and tolerance and patience and appreciation of others, even if they're not like us, even if sometimes they make us a little crazy. We have to appreciate what they're saying, because someone could say 5 things to you and you might be disregarding things, but you might get 2 really good perspectives or 2 good points about that. We want to contribute to the collective unconsciousness and the collective, the herd, where we are in as deep need as individuals. We also are part of a larger community and a larger society to hopefully spread the good word and be models for younger generations. And if we're acting as mentors, this is our opportunity to help them with communications and sharing the fact that as we mature, as I mentioned earlier, we're not necessarily quite so opinionated and so resistant to hearing something that's different from us. So we want to hopefully achieve amicable and respectful relationships within our clubs and with our communities and in our any relationships. So let's have the next slide, please. So I think if you decide that you'd like to sort of work on this a little bit, or sort of make a conscious effort, maybe look at some of the different personality types. I mean, I explained to you about the BEST and the Jungian, but there's also Myers-Briggs. There's lots of online tests that you can do, and just to sort of get a sense of who you are. I mean, I'm sure some of you have. You want to ask those probing questions. And at your Zonta meetings, you can play the get to know you games by having some fun and asking someone, you know, there's those great games about, you know, the 3 truths and a lie, or, you know, what was your best experience as a child? Or tell me about when, you know, you can divide the club into, did you grow up in the country or the city? How were different experiences for you? Or you can always, I mean, I think one of the things that would be fun to do is look at some of the pictures of your Zonta club from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and say, how have we changed? How has Zonta changed? And I know this sounds kind of soppy, and I will take that. Just having an open mind, and quite honestly, having an open heart. By listening and observing, you really can benefit so much by what you can learn and what you can really take in, and have the courage to sort of say, I can learn more. I didn't know that. And truly by listening and asking really good questions. Next slide, please, Sheena. So I'm going to challenge you, and we're going to have some time just for some input in a little bit. Just to use anything that you've learned tonight. If you've learned one thing or refreshed one thing for you, is choose one person within your club or someone in your social circle, maybe even in your family, because for Canadians, our Thanksgiving is coming up pretty soon, so there might be family gatherings. And for my friends to the south, you're going to be having Thanksgiving and then Christmas shortly after. Choose that person and think about their best style or their communication style based on your observations. Think about a new approach, using different words, using different language, adjusting your body language, for example. Just give it a try. See how it comes out. The worst thing that could happen is that you walk away and say, well, I gave it a shot, and here's what I learned about myself. Maybe I didn't say the right thing. Here, I'm going to try it again. Or you say, that was really successful. I had the best conversation with Mary that I've had in years. That was really good. Again, it's about looking at your own strengths and challenges that are going to help you or hinder you with your communications with that person. And that other person's style, their strengths and their challenges, because I don't always think there's weaknesses, I think they're challenges, is how they affect you and how they affect your communications. And in some ways, your style impacts on your communication with your other people and your colleagues and your friends. So let's have our final thoughts, and then we can open up to conversation. So I really believe very much, seek first to understand and then to be understood. And Stephen Covey talks about this, and I think this is something that of many things I've learned, is this is really important. Like, why is this person acting this way? What is it? What are they doing? Like, where are they coming from? And that takes courage, my friends. That does take courage, because as the second quote is here, it's not all hard to understand a person. It's only hard to listen without bias, because we all have our biases. It doesn't have to harden into racism or any other extremes, but we all have biases. We have the people with whom we like to spend time with. We have certain colleagues with whom we'd rather sit at a Zonta meeting. It takes courage to sit down beside the person you don't always agree with, or to sit across from them. And so I want to thank you for participating in this learning opportunity. There's lots of other resources on our Zonta website and the Leadership Development Committee page, especially on the topics of conflict and difficult conversations. So I would encourage you to explore those, particularly if you're intrigued or at least interested in this, or you think, I could do a bit better job in this. So basically, I want to turn it over to you and hear your thoughts about some of the points perhaps that have resonated with you, that you think, I hadn't considered that before, or, well, this is a bunch of crap. Whatever your thoughts are. Let's hear from you, my friends. Just where are you now? So let me ask you, rather than saying, are there any questions? Let me ask you this one question. What is the one thing that maybe you either learned tonight or was refreshed to you, or that you thought, yeah, I got to work on that? So I'm going to open up to hearing from our participants.
And ladies, at this point, if you would like to turn your cameras on, we can all see each other.
Good to see you.
Wonderful.
May I speak? It's Mary Yunker.
Of course, my dear.
Good to see you people. I don't have my camera on. I don't want you to see what I've got going on in the house, as our jury rigged everything so I could hear people better for this meeting. But Kathleen, I really liked what you said tonight when you said about, are you invited to the dance, or are you being invited to dance? And I think sometimes in our club memberships, we invite people to join our club, invite them to the dance, but then we don't get them on a committee, we don't get them involved, and so we're not dancing with them. And that's what I like, that what you said there. And I think we need to do more of the dancing with the people.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate that.
I think for me, Kathleen, I'm probably like you. I show my emotions and I'm direct, and I have to remind myself sometimes that doesn't always come up across as positive. And
Yeah.
so I don't realize that I seem cold or intimidating because I'm just all about let's get this done. And you know, like Lori, let's use Lori. She's always smiling. I forget to smile, so it comes off as something different than the intention. So I have to remind myself.
Yeah, thank you for that. And thank you for saying that, Carrie, because I think that that's a really good perspective. And I know that there was one of our Zonda members who was on our district committee not too long ago, and her style was very much, this is exactly what it is. And people were sort of intimidated her. And then when you actually had a conversation with her, or you're sitting in the car with her coming back from a Zonda meeting, you're thinking, this does not seem to be the same kind of person. They're warm and funny and expressive. It just took time to get through that, and it was worth it. Thank you.
I think it's important to remember that everybody's different and their personalities are different and how we click with one another. And it's good to review and to learn that different aspects of how to deal with everybody's different personalities. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Janice. I appreciate that. And certainly as governor, you're working with a lot of different personalities.
Yes.